I did not become a technical founder through the traditional route. I did not begin with a computer science degree, a software engineering title, or a startup team waiting to turn my ideas into a platform. I began with years of curriculum, frameworks, operational documents, lived experience, and a very clear understanding of the problem I wanted to solve. I knew what Grace Legacy Academy needed to protect, what it needed to teach, how learners should move through it, and what responsible support should never be allowed to replace. The software came later. The architecture came from the work itself. That distinction matters because technical leadership is not limited to the person typing every line of code. It also belongs to the person defining what must be built, why it exists, how the pieces should work together, and what standards determine whether it is safe and useful. Technical leadership is more than coding. A founder can outsource code and still fail technically. A founder can also use AI-assisted implementation and remain deeply responsible for the system. My job was to translate human needs into product requirements. I defined the learning model, platform boundaries, user journeys, terminology, governance rules, and the relationship between curriculum, software, and support. I had to decide what belonged in the academy, what belonged in Grace Companion, what should stay local, what could eventually connect to commerce, and what should never be exposed simply because it was technically possible. That required systems thinking, information architecture, workflow design, product judgment, testing, and constant review. Coding was one part of the build. Coherence was the larger job. Grace Legacy did not begin as a blank app idea. The source material was already a system. There was real intellectual property behind it: curriculum, restoration frameworks, governance principles, product documents, learning pathways, and operational systems. The challenge was not inventing random features. The challenge was preserving the meaning of the work while turning it into something people could actually navigate and use. A document can explain a lesson. A platform has to manage access, progression, support, boundaries, feedback, and continuity. Every piece of content needed a functional home. The R3 framework could not become decorative language on a dashboard. Grace Companion could not become an unrestricted chatbot. Wounded but Wiser could not lose its restorative pacing just because software prefers speed. The build began with translation from philosophy into rules, from documents into modules, and from values into system behavior. I worked with ChatGPT and Codex as different kinds of collaborators inside one founder-led process. ChatGPT helped me reason through architecture, organize requirements, edit language, challenge decisions, and preserve continuity across a very large body of work. Codex worked more like a senior implementation partner by inspecting repositories, building features, correcting code, generating assets, documenting changes, and testing whether the system behaved as intended. But the tools did not decide what Grace Legacy should become. They responded to direction, source material, constraints, feedback, and review. Sometimes they challenged me. Sometimes I rejected their recommendation. Sometimes they caught something I missed. And sometimes I caught something they misunderstood. That friction was not a failure of the process. It was part of the quality control. The collaboration worked because the roles were clear and final authority never became ambiguous. AI assistance does not transfer responsibility. I remained responsible for the curriculum, meaning product claims, learner experience, architecture, governance boundaries, approvals, and consequences of what was deployed. That meant generated output could never be treated as automatically correct. I reviewed the language, tested the screens, compared behavior against the intended workflow, documented problems, requested revisions, and rejected features that did not align with the system. I also had to know when not to connect something. Financial records, legal materials, ownership information, private operational data, and sensitive learner information do not belong everywhere simply because integration is possible. Human-led development includes restraint. Sometimes the most technical decision is deciding that a capability should remain separate, local, delayed, or completely out of scope. That is where governance stops being a policy document and becomes an engineering requirement. Over time, the result became more than a collection of pages. It became a functioning production platform with learning structures, governed support pathways, system documentation, repository history, testing records, and a clear route for continued development. OpenAI Build Week accelerated that work, but it did not create the vision. It forced the architecture to become visible, testable, demonstrable, and documented under pressure. And that pressure proved something important. A non-traditional founder can lead a serious technical build when the domain knowledge is deep, the requirements are clear, the collaboration is structured, and the founder remains accountable for every decision. I did not need to pretend I followed a conventional path. I needed to understand the system well enough to lead it honestly. Being non-traditional does not mean being unserious. It means the expertise entered through a different door. My path into software came through curriculum design, restoration systems, operational architecture, product development, documentation, and a refusal to separate human values from technical decisions. I expanded what I could execute. It did not replace the source material, judgment, responsibility, or founder. Grace Legacy Academy was built through lived expertise, disciplined structure, iterative collaboration, and technical assistance. That is not less real because the path was unconventional. It is simply a different kind of build story. In the next video, I will explain how I divide the work between ChatGPT and Codex, and why I do not use either one as an automatic answer machine. Subscribe to Grace Legacy Academy and follow the build one decision, revision, and occasional AI board meeting at a time.